Hello everyone, welcome back to Quetzal Talk. Today we have Justicia Fronteriza. Is that how you guys pronounce it? Sorry, sometimes I'm horrible with Spanish. So, but
Yes.
awesome. And then your name Veronica, correct?
Yes, Veronica Carbajal.
Sorry, I can't pronounce it. How do you say the last name again?
Carbajal?
Carbajal.
Yes, you got it.
Awesome. And then we have Raquel
Rojo.
Rojo. Nice. That's
That
a
one's
cool
easy.
name. Well, welcome. And so Veronica, what is your part in the organization?
Like Raquel, I'm one of the founding members, and I'm president of the board.
Oh, awesome. And then Raquel?
I'm part of the board and the treasurer.
Awesome. Cool. Welcome. So you guys are a big part of the organization and big part of so what got you started in the first place? Why did you want to start this organization?
So I ran for mayor in November of 2020. And, prior to my running, I was aware that big money has a huge influence on local elections and also state and federal, right? But as a local candidate, I realized also that there isn't a lot of attention paid to what happens here. So you have a lot of organizations that are looking at Texas, for instance, as a state. They're not looking at the counties or at the city municipal races or the school boards. And so, I talked to different people. The group, Community First Organization, put together a book that really outlined the campaign finance reports of local candidates. And once you look at those reports, it's obvious why certain people vote a certain way. And it's because of their donors, right? So they're answering to their big campaign donors. They're not answering to their constituents. And started talking to people who had volunteered for my campaign. And we decided to put together a political action committee with two missions. One, to help progressive candidates get elected. And the second was to figure out how to make our local elections more fair so that people want to run for office and can actually win. And so leveling the playing field for candidates was an interest, and that's how we started to work on creating this political action committee.
Yeah, that's an important and big endeavor you're trying to do. And Raquel, why did you join the organization?
So I really got involved with politics in the 2016 presidential campaign, but then even more so during the 2020 campaign. I'm a big Bernie bro.
Yeah, go Bernie.
So a few of us, were volunteers. Primarily our another board member, Giancarlo Tirado, he and I, that's how we met, and we did a lot of work locally. Bernie actually won in El Paso, and so that was really nice to see, right? Especially
good job, congrats.
Yeah. And so we mobilized a lot. We did a lot of block walking, mostly texting, actually, now that I think about it, because it was, during the pandemic. And so it was really inspiring to be able to get out there and educate people and talk to them about the issues. And El Paso is a lot more progressive than I think we give it credit for. And so unfortunately, after he dropped out, there was, we're all brokenhearted, but then there was Vero's campaign. So a lot of us kind of shifted our efforts into her campaign. So it was just a natural transition. And like Vero said, trying to get our local politics to be more fair and more representative of the pueblo.
Oh yeah, and then so you ended up sticking with it, getting a passion for it.
Yes, I kind of got recruited, and I really enjoy both of them and their values and the lucha that they have in their heart. So it resonated with me. So that's why I'm part of it as well.
Hell yeah. And so you guys have a petition going on right now, correct?
Yes. So like Vero was saying, there's two endeavors. So it's Justicia Fronteriza, which is the general PAC. And then the other one is called, it's a special political action committee. Did I get that right? And that one is El Pasoans for Fair Elections. And that's the one that has the initiative, the ballot initiative currently.
Okay. And can you go into detail about what Veronica, you're getting pointed at. Can you go into detail a little about
Yes, so we have 3 separate propositions. Like if you vote this November, you'll see that the city has 3 separate propositions, right? Theirs are for the bond, or 3 different bond values that would be borrowed if people say yes. And so it's the same with us, but different. We have 3 separate propositions. They're connected to each other, but they're different. So one could win, one could fail, and they would still be individually upheld. The first one is limiting campaign contributions by people, so individuals, to $1,000. We also have caps on political action committees and how much a candidate can donate to their own campaign. So it's really about limiting campaign contributions. That's the first one, and it's the most popular one. We did a poll before we started, and 76% of the people that responded to the poll said that they favored campaign contributions at $1,000 cap. The second one is public financing, and that one's a little bit more complicated to explain, but basically if you're a candidate for city council or the mayor, you would be required to collect 1% of the equivalent of 1% of the people in your district or in the city to support you, right? So that you could tap into public financing. So that would be a pot of money that the city would have that as a candidate you can tap into once you've met that requirement or threshold. The third one is ranked choice voting. And ranked choice voting, or RCV, is when you go to the ballot, you would get a chance to rank your candidates. And so say, for instance, if we go back to the Bernie race, you think, okay, Bernie is my candidate, but I'm worried, right, that he may not win El Paso, he may not win Texas or the country. So if I have ranked choice voting, I could rank him number 1 and then rank a safer, quote unquote, safer candidate number 2. So if Bernie was eliminated, and he was, during the first round, then my vote would go to my second person, say it was Biden. And so that's how ranked choice voting works. It basically shuffles your single vote to different candidates depending on how they're doing, and it's done in rounds, immediately. So you have round 1, who is eliminated, and then once they're eliminated, the votes that they received go to the number 2 for each particular voter. And so it's pretty cool. I mean, there are apps that you can use for ranked choice voting. There's software that's being developed, that's being used throughout the country. It's becoming more and more popular because, one, it encourages people to vote. Oftentimes people, like for instance, if you wanted Bernie to win, you thought, oh, but he's not going to win, why bother? And so you don't vote for any other elections. So that's one issue, but the other is the expense of elections. Running elections is expensive. The city of El Paso is paying $1 million to run candidates for 4 races in this November election. And they'll have to do it again because there'll be a runoff because we have so many candidates running. And so with ranked choice voting, no runoff. It's done automatically. You get people to go vote once, they're done. And so right now there's an issue with it not being, there's a question of whether it's allowed in Texas. And so we're hoping that, if we pass it, it would just sit here and then wait for the state to make it legal, and then now we could use it.
Shit, hell yeah. And would that only be for, say, like the Democrat primaries and Republican primaries, or would it be for the general election?
It would be the general election. So with city council races, they're nonpartisan, which means that you don't know when you go to the ballot whether a candidate for city council or mayor is a Democrat or Republican or libertarian. You may know them, from their interactions with different parties and their policies and their values, but it's not designated. And that's also a really important issue because people will go to the ballot and think, I'm only going to vote for Democrats or only vote for Republicans. And then they see these city elections. They're like, whoa, what do I do? And why are there so many candidates still? And it's because there is no primary for the city council races. And so unlike with other races, like for Congress, for instance, you have one Democrat, one Republican, right? Maybe an independent. That's it. But with the city council races, you're going to have all 8 candidates for one district because they haven't been eliminated through the primary.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess that how do you say it again? The round voting or
Ranked choice.
ranked? I don't know.
Yes.
I got round the ranked choice voting. Yeah, that does sound like it would be a lot better than having, because people would have more incentive to do it. They don't want to go to 4 times vote for the same people, or hopefully the same person won't get voted out, I guess.
Yes.
And, in talking to people, it was, it's something kind of unique that we're not used to hearing. But once you explain to them the process and then what it does in the long run, so it saves money because then there's no runoffs. In the last runoff, it cost the city $750,000, and the voter turnout was only 13%. So that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that sounds like a waste.
For very little people voting.
Yeah, and then those 13%, you could easily just like focus all your intent on just those people that are gonna vote. And probably, is there from your statistics that you've seen, is it like a certain class that votes here in El Paso, or is it like, or there's not really any statistics on that?
In terms of demographics?
Yes, demographics.
I think, well, we know certain precincts, right? So we all live, if you live in the county and then if you live in the city, we're focusing mostly on city elections, but we live in different districts. And within the districts, right, that's 1 through 8, are precincts, and the precincts are smaller, little districts. And so there is data about which precincts show up the most and which ones don't. And talking about the primary involving the Bernie race, the precincts in the south side and the precincts on the east side went for Bernie, right? And so we know that those demographics tend to be younger, lower income, working class backgrounds. Even if they're middle class, you have multi-generational families, and so that information is out there. But we collected 14,000 signatures. We met the threshold for getting through the first round. What we're trying to do with the petitions is change local law, which is very challenging. And so in El Paso, we have to do this twice. We did the signatures, they were validated, which means that the city clerk found that they were indeed legit, right? That we didn't forge them, that they belong to people who live in the city limits who are registered to vote. And then we went to city council and pled our case, and council voted no. And so now we have to collect another set of signatures in order to get on the ballot. So we bypass city council this next time, and it just goes straight to the voters. So it's a series of hurdles that we've had to overcome, and we're hoping that people will reach out, like you have, to sign the petition, to gather petitions for us. I've been carrying my clipboard again now since we have this new requirement. And just at a family gathering, I was able to get 16 signatures. And so it does pay off to talk to people. And it gave me a chance to talk to my family about what I've been doing and why this is important. And we may not all share the same political views, but we're all tired of not being listened to. We're all tired of being told, oh, we need, $200 million more for streets, when it's like that's a basic service that the city has been neglecting for decades and focusing on other things, and now we're being asked again to pay with our property taxes. And so when you break it down to people, it's like they understand that it's that they're not being heard.
Oh yeah, like a lot of people seem frustrated, especially like you said with the streets, man. It's so ridiculous here. With this these propositions, how long do you have to get it on to collect all the signatures?
I believe the deadline this time around is January 12th. Is that right?
Oh, well, you have some time. Hopefully the holiday. Hopefully you could find some place like when the holidays where they're overrun with people and just like throw out the pamphlets trying to like, hey, please sign or something. What's your focus? How do you plan on getting all these signatures?
So we're already starting, like Veronica was saying, and during early voting, we have people that are going to be volunteering as well as during the election. That's actually when we kicked off, was during the elections it is this year. Gosh, time goes by so quickly. It was January?
It was, March. March 1st was when we started it was a primary election. And as Raquel said, people should look out for us at the polling places. So if you go vote in the city limits, look out for us, because we'll hopefully be out there trying to collect your signature, because we know that those people are registered to vote. We'll go to other spaces like the universities and restaurants, but it's hit or miss. And like I said, some people will sign because there's peer pressure, right? Their friends are signing, but they're not actually registered to vote.
Oh, okay.
Or they don't realize that they were registered to vote in Austin when they were in college, and they never changed their registration. And so it's sad. It's sad because we see that all the time. So this is also a push to get people to learn more about your voting rights and your voting duties, right? Like, you have to update. In Texas, they've made it very, very difficult, right, for you to vote. And so you have to overcome certain hurdles, but you should overcome them because your vote is so important. But keeping your address updated, your IDs updated, and making sure that you're actually registered in the county or in the city that you're trying to vote in.
Oh yeah, and is there an easy place for people that you know of to register to vote, or to find out if they are registered?
Yes, we're lucky that our county elections officer really believes in the internet, and we have a great website, epcountyvotes.com, and that's the El Paso County elections office. And so they have a lot of data. You can log on and see if you're registered. It says like, am I registered? And you just just type in your first, last name, and date of birth, and it'll tell you if you're registered in the city or in the county.
Oh, hell yeah, that's easy. So you hear that, everyone? It's easy to find out if you're registered to vote or not. But to register, how is that? Can you do that online, or do you have to go someplace?
Online, you can request the application to register to vote. But you can, again, go to epcountyvotes.com. You can go to the DMV, where you get your driver's license. And register there. You can, if you put it on social media, someone will find you. The League of Women Voters, for instance, League of Women Voters is excellent. They have people who are deputized who can meet you somewhere and register you, and then take your form with you. There's some rules about who can actually handle your registration form, so that's also. But we cannot register on the spot. That's the issue, right? That if you're like, oh, well, I want to vote on November 8th, I'm going to register on November 8th. That doesn't happen. That deadline was October 11th, so it's already too late for you to try to register to vote. Okay,
so you have a little less than a month before an election to get registered.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, because it's really important, and I think a lot of people don't realize how important elections are, especially local elections. Like, people give such a big hoopla about the presidential election. You see all these people always go gung-ho about casting their vote, but then come like right now when there's no presidential election, where are all the people? Like, what's your guys' take on this apathy, I guess?
I think people are tired. I think people are disconnected. And disheartened, really. That's one of the things that we discovered when we talked to people, is like, well, what's the point? There's all this influx of money into our local politics, and politicians are bought and paid for. And so what's my little vote going to do against that? And that's exactly why this organization exists. I'm on the fence about pointing fingers, but it's obvious, right? We all grew up listening to Oscar Leeser's commercials all our lives. That name is so popular, it's so ingrained in our head, and he has the money to continue to pump those commercials out, right? And so, in my opinion, a lot of these elections are popularity contests. And not to even deviate too much, just my mom right now, when I was having lunch with her, she's like, well, tell me who to vote for. She's like, because if not, I'm just going to vote for what name I like. And I was like, well, don't do that, Mom, that's kind of like not the point. Pues dime. She was like, well, tell me.
Oh yeah, that does defeat the purpose. That makes it like an uneducated vote. It seems like it's worse than a vote not cast. I don't know. Or what do you feel? What do you guys feel about that?
I'll admit I was the same way. I wanted to exercise my duty, my right, but I didn't always take the time to educate myself. And again, like I said, when you have mailers coming in, when you have commercials, and like those names stick, right? They stick out. And so that's sometimes what you end up picking. Or, oh, this is a woman, and I'm gonna pick the woman. Well, that doesn't always necessarily translate into the same values that you have.
Yeah, you really have to do your research to find out who you should vote for, and you shouldn't just rely on, like you said, the popularity contest by hearing name or word of mouth or who you like.
And I think, if I can interrupt, I think that it's really important, if you're listening to this and you're interested in local politics, to be that person for your family. I'm a lawyer, and so my family will ask me, like, which judges do I vote for? Because they'll print out their ballots. Like, I have family members that are really engaged, and so they're like, but I don't know this person, I don't know that person. And so I'll send them the ballot from the county, and I'll highlight it, and then I'll send pictures to my family of my recommendations. And they'll do the same, right? Because sometimes they've had interactions with people that I haven't. And so, El Paso's small, so, inevitably someone's like, oh, I went to high school with that candidate, or like, so-and-so used to date that person. And so it's interesting. It's always like a great conversation starter. And I think we need to create a different culture where people feel comfortable talking about it, because we're told so often, don't bring up politics at the dinner table, right? Especially Thanksgiving, don't talk about politics. And I think that has really hurt us, because Democrats tend to be the more polite of the two parties, and we just take that to heart. And so we don't want to create trouble. We want to be, play nice. And then what happens is that we get silenced, and silence is violence, right? Silence is complicity. So to the extent that you feel comfortable and safe telling your family and friends who to vote for, do it, and then make it a celebration, right? So that you go to the polls together, that you get dinner or hang out afterwards, you take a picture together, and it becomes the thing that you do. And I was very lucky. My family was always into politics, not necessarily engaged except for my great grandpa, but I had an uncle who was a union leader with the AFL-CIO. And he was really, really, and he's a Chicano, back in the 60s and 70s, and he was really like encouraging all of us to vote. And so we vote in his honor. So we go together and we take a picture from my tío, and this was before I got engaged with politics this directly, but that's what we used to do. And it was great. And I think that more and more of those traditions are needed, so that we just make it a habit. Just like, other habits that we have that may not be as impactful sometimes.
Yeah, but like you said, if you just keep doing it, it gets ingrained in you, and then you start getting that passion for it, and you start realizing how much it does matter.
And I tell people, like, politics are my favorite sport. They're my favorite novela. Now they're my favorite comedy show. Like, if you saw The District, KVIA, for instance, had they interviewed the candidates for City Council District 6. And the Real Fit Fam of El Paso posted the videos, and I was like, oh my gosh, like it's hilarious. Like, how, if that person thinks they can run, surely, we have better candidates out there. But it's just, once you get engaged and you start to learn the players' names, and you start to see how this is really like a chess game, it becomes really interesting. And you see things differently. You pay attention to the news differently. You pay attention to your community differently. And so often people don't know who to blame. They're just like, oh, this really sucks. And it's like, okay, well, who's in charge of that? Is it the school board? Is it your council? Is it, and even issues like abortion. It's a federal issue, it's a state issue, but city council has a role to play when it comes to criminalizing abortions, right? And guess what? We have a police department. So there is a role. We also have health clinics. We also have different things that impact that right. And so it's important for people to start to make those connections for themselves, because even though we're all overwhelmed, and some folks are more overwhelmed than others, it's the only way we can get, rid of all of this oppression is by having a seat at the table and by making our voice count.
Hell yeah. And you guys also it seemed like you guys are doing a good job of putting up like information about the candidates that you right now, like on your Facebook posts. Like, I saw a bunch of posts about the different candidate information. I think that's an awesome job. So is there anybody else doing that, or is it just you guys have done that so far?
There's a couple of organizations. The CFC. What does it stand for?
The Community First Coalition, the El Paso Young Democrats, like I said, KVIA. I think I know that KTUP, the radio station for NPR, they've been showing the audio from the League of Women Voters. So these different organizations have interviewed the candidates, and they're real short. Like they get 1 minute to answer, which is great because it makes people get to the point. We created our own scorecard, and we had 21 questions ranging from climate change to Duranguito and the sports arena, to the city manager, to immigration rights, abortion, decriminalization, transforming the police department, and a few others. So we asked the candidates, every single one, to turn in the questionnaire, and we were going to post it as a scorecard and also look at it for endorsement, right? So as a group, we have volunteers that are willing to do things. We have social media presence. And so that was sort of like the two purposes of the scorecard, to get your position on issues and then to figure out if we could endorse you. And we heard from most of the candidates. That said, when you look at the scorecard, you have the 21 questions, and a check mark means they support our position, and a cross means no, or an X means no. We have a couple of candidates that filled everything out in green, right? The check mark. So it's like, oh, that's fantastic. But we didn't endorse them. And we didn't endorse them because it's not enough, right? We have membership as part of the PAC. It's not just the board. It's not just me that makes this decision. Our membership is very informed about people. And so they were not going to give out the endorsement and the organization's reputation by getting behind someone who we knew, even though we couldn't find anything that showed that they disagreed with our question, right? So like we can't point to their line about this answer, but in general, they're lacking receipts. Like they haven't worked in the community, either privately or professionally. They have other positions that counter what we've asked them, maybe not on point, right? Like maybe they don't want to decriminalize abortion, but they don't want abortion in general. And so that's incongruent. And other things like, what they've said, the level of intellect they've shown, right, in addressing other community problems. And so it was a bunch of different factors that we looked at, and we voted, and so we chose to not endorse. And it's gotten us some backlash because people are like, well, but this person said, all check marks, and so you gave them a platform to lie. And it's like, well, they haven't technically lied because we haven't found anything else that contradicts this answer, because our questions are so different. But at the same time, we understand people's frustrations, but it's a mechanism I think that people do need to see. Conversely, there are other candidates that positions themselves as progressives, and then when you see their answers, you're like, oh my God, like half of your answers are no. How can you be a progressive? And then we had a couple of people who are candidates who are lawyers who basically said, I can't answer yes or no, so here's my long answer or my short answer. And it's like, we didn't ask you for a sentence. We didn't ask you to create a nuance or to create a caveat. We wanted yes or no, because we are all tired of people who are not committal, right? They're not going to commit to a position because they're going to offend their donors, or they're going to seem like a radical, they're going to seem like a socialist or whatever. And it's like, if you're not willing to take that risk, we don't want to endorse you. But now those positions are out there. And so that's the flip side of it, right? That you might think, if you look quickly and you don't think about it, you're like, oh, all green, that means yes. Maybe this person, it seems problematic in other ways, but we do want people to look at what we've put out and to look at what other people have put out and to have a conversation about it, and then ultimately make your choice.
Oh yeah, no, that's very cool. I'm glad that you did that you're not just taking their answers, that you actually like, well, let's look at how you are as a person, what you've done. So that's pretty cool. That's giving people a little more of a, I guess, you're checking more on them, I guess, being a better watchdog. So yes. That's cool.
And real quick, I mean, for District 1, that's like the Upper Valley, right? That's like one of probably the wealthiest of the districts, of the 8 districts of City Council. We are not endorsing in that race, and there's a lot of candidates, so there will be a runoff probably in December. And then for District 5, that's the east side, and we have recommended Richard Genera. And for District 6, which is also the east side, we're endorsing, our only endorsement is Art Fierro. And District 8, which is basically the UTEP area, executive UTEP area down to Segundo Barrio and the Chamizal, that we're not endorsing in either. And like Raquel said, there's, for instance, a Latina, and, we're both Latinas, Chicanas, Mexican Americans, and we're like, okay, that's awesome, but this person is not a community person. And so we're not fooled either by the check marks or by a person's demographic identity.
That's actually the district that I live in. I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah. She's the incumbent, and she voted not to decriminalize abortion. She voted, she's been really kind of anti-immigrant, which is huge. I'm first generation born, so, that's near and dear to my heart. And I find it really interesting because on her bio, she also, she identifies as a first generation born U.S. citizen. So that's always kind of
Seems
confusing
almost
to me.
hypocritical in a way.
In my personal opinion, yes. So I'm actually really excited that we endorse somebody in the district that I live in, which is Art Fierro.
Art Fierro. And so I think I heard only 2 names that you guys actually endorsed, correct?
Yes, Art Fierro for District 6, and then Richard Genera is recommended for District 5.
Okay, so you're not endorsing him,
We're
just
not
recommending
endorsing him, yes.
Okay, and then so Art Fierro, what made you guys want to endorse him? Like, he said yes to everything, and you guys know he has a good background.
He's been so he did say yes to all of the things, and then also in terms of his, what we think of as the receipts, right, his community investment in the past. He was a state representative. He also, I believe, was on he was a trustee for the community college and has been involved in different things. And so not only because he was a state rep, but because of the work that he did while that, and also his position on things beyond our scorecard, indicate to us that he's willing to do it and that he's willing to be a candidate. And that's actually part of the thing, is like, having been a candidate myself, like, it is a lot of work. And it's not just putting your name on the ballot. It's putting yourself up for scrutiny. It's also knowing how to block walk, knowing how to talk to people, doing the research, and having something to lean on, whether it's your personal experience that's motivating you or your professional experience. And so we thought that Art Fierro actually had that you see him working, and you've seen him working in the last few years, and his agreement with our positions, I think, really convinced us that these 2 things would work for our favor.
Okay, awesome. And then this other gentleman, Richard Genera, you said? Genera?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Sometimes the R's really get tripped up. But what made you guys just not endorse him, but just, how did you put it again? Recommend. There you go.
I think, there's... I'm not at liberty to disclose like our process, but I think that it goes to the issue of, again, we have high standards, and Richard is fantastic, and he has been involved with certain organizations like the Young Democrats, but that wasn't enough for us. We wanted someone who was really a lot more involved and had tangible things that we could point to, right? That you've done X, Y, or Z. And we're a bunch of overachievers who are juggling all sorts of things. And so our standards for other people are that. And it's like, are you really hustling, right? Are you working super hard? And so we like Richard a lot. We like his positions on most things. And if there's a runoff, then we're going to reconsider whether we move on to endorse. And he has 2 opponents. One of them is Isabel Salcido, who's the incumbent. And I don't live in her district, but I've been getting text messages, I've been getting phone calls, and she has a lot of money. And she has a lot of the money that we think of as funny money. So this funny money comes from the people that are also, they're donating to good causes and also to elections. And so Paul Foster, Woody Hunt, Larry Francis, developers, et cetera, et cetera. And so the two incumbents for District 5 and 6, Isabel Salcido and Claudia Rodriguez, they're getting tons and tons of that money. And it's no wonder that they're like supporting development projects instead of being smart with our money. Instead of focusing on city services, like we talked about the streets, there's also the city daycares, the city animal services, the libraries, the community centers, the grants that they apply to, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the list is pretty long in terms of city services. The one that everyone seems to always focus on is the police, right? So it's like the police are funded. They take up 60% of our budget. And we haven't had any leadership that's really willing, with the exception of Representative Anelo, really confront this question, right? Is policing the best way to solve some of our societal problems, like homelessness, like mental health, like domestic violence? Can we keep policing and punishing things instead of dealing with the root cause? And so those kinds of questions we'd love to see, bring up or brought up by candidates and addressed. So we'll see what happens with this election.
And with the police issue, a lot of people though think that El Paso is one of the safest cities though, and a lot of people do you think a lot of people would say that's because of our police system, or you think that's totally not connected to why we're considered safe?
I think that it's actually I haven't looked at the most recent data, but I think that's changing. And I think if you just watch the news, the local news, which I do, like I don't have cable, I watch PBS and the local news, and that's all I watch.
That's better for you. Don't get the cable. Don't rot your mind.
and it's there to me, and it used to be that at work we would talk about certain cases and whatnot, and I do civil law, I don't do criminal, but we would talk about someone brought a knife to a party, right? And there was an issue. Now it's a gun. And so we're seeing that more and more and more in El Paso. Like someone got shot. I'm like, how are we still so safe? Is it only because the rest of Texas is also increasing in gun violence? Is it because the rest of the country is seeing such an increase? Because it's so easy to purchase a gun now. And so I don't know. I do have a sense, having grown up in Juarez and having spent a lot of time there when it was really violent, of course, there's a huge difference here, right? That I can walk my park at night and not feel like I have to be cautious, but not afraid. And I appreciate that sense of freedom. It's huge. I don't know that we can attribute all of it to the policing and only to the police department, right? So I think there's a lot that we need to look into. Back when El Paso had a lot of petty crime and vandalism in the 80s and 90s, the city focused on community policing. And so that meant that cops were assigned to a certain neighborhood, that there was infrastructural investments like street lighting, which also helps, right? Like we do have a lot of data now that tells us what makes a neighborhood more likely to get vandalized. And it's vacant buildings, lack of street lighting, lack of speed bumps even, and big buildings. So like if you have a sports arena and it's shut down most of the year, that's like, there's a word for it. It's like I think it's like a dark wall or something. But anyway, those kinds of buildings actually attract a lot of crime because there is an activity, right? Human beings are actually, like non-police human beings are actually the best safeguard. Like the nosy vecino, right? Who's always like on the lookout. Like my neighbors are amazing. And so like because of the petition drive, we had a lot of people like stopping by my house and picking up things, and I wasn't always home, and so they would text me like, hey, so-and-so's like left something in your mailbox or whatever, and I was like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. But we keep an eye out for each other, and that I think has helped a lot in us feeling safe, and also people who are who have bad intentions, knowing that like you don't mess with that neighborhood because people have dogs, people have the ring, people have good street lighting, they have each other, there's always like movement, right? The
doña at the window.
Yeah.
The doña at the window keeping an eye out.
The Pepa that's always like, yes.
The abuelito on the porch.
It's yeah. So the neighborhood watch programs are actually very, very helpful, and yeah. So I think I don't want to dismiss what the police department does or doesn't do. I think that requires a deeper conversation that involves a lot of data and looking at what's worked at other cities. But I do worry that in the last couple of years, things have changed because of the proliferation of guns and the shootings that we hear about. And that we don't necessarily hear about, right? Right after Uvalde, there was a shooting at a party with high schoolers, and 4 kids were shot. And we often think about shootings as like those that are killed, but those that survive, often, right? We don't talk about them.
Yeah, they're traumatized. There's all that trauma.
And sometimes the physical trauma that is like they have medical bills, or they are now disabled, or they're, there's all sorts of things that come up, but we don't really talk about them. We just talk about it's a mass shooting if 4 people die. But what about those that are injured? And so...
And the witnesses.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. No, so you think the best thing is just having like a tighter community, like you said, like the neighbors being closer, and you think that will help with the policing a little?
I think so. I think there's been a lot of work done also with urban planning, right? What kinds of streets, even like studies around trees, right? So a neighborhood that has a lot of trees tends to have less crime. And so then, okay, you think about, okay, what kind of neighborhoods have trees? Well, it's the older ones that were designed for white people, that were middle class, that, so there's a lot of things that we need to unpackage when we start thinking about urban planning in a place like El Paso. And then saying, like, how do we make up for that, right? So if trees do help reduce crime, then why aren't we tree planting in the communities where we have the most crime, right? Do we need more community centers? Do we need more skate parks? What do we need to give kids something else to do that's healthy and that creates community, right? Because it's like a park doesn't just help you physically, it also helps you understand who you live by, right? So when I walk my park, I recognize people. I recognize their dogs mostly, and then I recognize the people, and so like I know them. And if I happen to see them somewhere else in the neighborhood, I'm like, oh, that's my neighbor. And so if I see them in trouble, like I have a connection with that human being. And so how do we create those kinds of interactions with people? I think is very important in addressing some of the policing issues that we have now.
Oh yeah, just simple tactics like that. Like I even heard like a study saying that the more police you have in a neighborhood, the more crime there's gonna be. I don't know if you've heard any like statistics.
I've heard that for schools. So the more that a school is policed, the more that kids are criminalized. Right. So it's like, it's not just that you go to detention now, it's like it gets escalated a lot more quickly because you have police there. And so, so it requires a lot more attention and study, because even when we see like what happened at Uvalde, where you had 300 law enforcement officers not do a damn thing for those children and those teachers, people are like, policing is a solution for our school safety issues. And it's like, wait, what? Like, they had 300, there were like 500 kids in that building, 300 cops, and not a single one did anything to stop it. And so I'm not saying that all, law enforcement is useless, but I'm saying that we do need to take a critical look at what is behind all of this, and how to create really solutions that are, because I understand the knee-jerk reaction to want to just protect your children 100%, but it's not always the most immediate solution isn't always going to be actually effective.
Yeah, and then a lot of these schools starting to kind of look like mini prisons, like in a way. It's kind of creepy. So I don't know, like you said, we have a lot of things that as a community we need to think about and try to get to the root of solutions and try to just change things, because I think, like you said, we're all tired. So you guys do a lot of work with the community, and how many people are involved in the group actually?
I think our chat right now is up to 40 something or 50 something maybe.
50 something people
that are like
that are like active.
Yeah, pretty active.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. That's a lot of people seem to be getting fed up, and that's a start. So is it just mostly women or is it men as well?
That's a good question. I don't know that I've actually looked at it. And we have a lot of people that identify as, non-gender conformists or non-binary. So we don't really we don't really weight that out too much. We're a very young organization. We're barely coming up on our year anniversary, which is kind of surprising to people. They think that we've been around for at least 2 years and like we have this huge pool of people, but we have four board members, and then, like I said, between 40 or 50 volunteers that are pretty active.
Oh yeah, and you guys are doing a lot of work so far just with these petitions, but other than the petitions and getting candidate information and putting it out there and trying to endorse people, what else is the organization focusing on?
That's a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, theoretically, once the petition, like, say theoretically it wins, like you guys win, what's going to happen after?
Well, if we're able to meet our deadline and or we work with the city on creating an amendment that we're happy with, then if we have to go to the ballot, then it's another, it's a campaign shift. So we go from gathering petitions to now marketing to get people to go vote in May. And then there will be school board elections. So we'll be focusing on school board elections in May. And what comes after that is a really concerted effort to recruit people to run for office, right? The 20 or so candidates that we looked at this time around self-nominated. We didn't recruit them. They decided to run for office. But when I ran, it was because I was recruited, right? People that I really respected and loved kept asking me to run, and so I decided to do it. And we know that we need to do the same thing. Looking at you, Raquel. And and of course we're going to look within. It's what we're doing with the petitions is laying the groundwork so that we do have a political system that people feel is worth joining. Right now, they don't. A lot of people with really good ethical values and love for the community feel like the system is so tainted and so corrupt and so gross, they don't want to be a part of it. And what we're trying to do is make it so that they feel like this is something I could see myself running. I could see myself wanting to be in politics because it's reflective of my values. And so, we're not just asking them to go into the lion's den and hope for the best, which is what I was ready to do. But I think that it's unfair. It's unfair to people to ask them to run a campaign and then be in office and just be fighting all of the time, right? We need to have a cohort, like a strong group of people running at the same time. And so that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking to our membership really seriously, identifying people in different districts about running and getting behind them. Because, for all of their big money, the oligarchs actually don't have amazing candidates. And so you have to really think about that too. It's like, gosh, they've got all of this money, right? And they still end up with candidates that are questionable because they flip-flop or because they don't represent the community, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that we definitely have membership that would be fantastic at being elected officials.
Oh yeah, and I hope you can find someone right away because we do need good people. So whoever's out there that thinks they're good enough, contact Justicia Fronteriza so you can try to see if you want to get yourself involved in politics because we really need good people, man. And
yes.
Well, anyway, I guess we should bring this up to a close. I don't want to take too much of your all's time. But if Raquel, do you have any closing statements you would like to everyone to know?
I did have a thought right now when you asked what's another thing that we would like to do, and I know that I'm not alone in this, but we kind of hit the ground running. We launched, and then right away we went into elections, and then right away we went into our ballot initiative. But education was one of the big things that comes up. Like I said, I haven't been completely, involved in politics for a very long time. I'm not politically savvy, and some of our membership isn't either. And that's okay. People recognize enough that we need change, and so they do get involved. So one of the things that I would like to see, and that I hope that we do, is a lot more education in both languages, because just like I said, I use my mom as an example. Tell me who to vote for, or educating, like, how do the local elections impact us locally, because I don't think we necessarily have a good understanding. And for anybody that's like me, a first generation born, like, we're only one generation away from when women didn't vote in Mexico. Women in Mexico only got the right to vote like in the 60s, I believe, late 50s, early 60s. That's not very long ago. So culturally, I think that's always been also like a man's right, per se. And then also, if you did grow up in Mexico or in other countries where a lot of the local elections are, corrupt. So that's another reason why people are like, oh, well, what for? What's the point? And so that's part of being disheartened and disengaged. And we're a working community, right? So it's not a priority. You have to put food on the table. But that's where the education comes in. And that's where the opportunity to really understand how those elections affect us, and making it easier for people to vote. So I think all of those things would really push our efforts for even further. Yeah. Empowerment.
No, hell yeah. I had no idea that that women, only one generation ago, women in Mexico didn't have
one
vote.
Generation for me, because
okay.
we're señoras already.
I don't think so. We're about the same age. Not that old. But so I guess like when, like the 60s, or when did they?
Yeah.
When did?
Yeah,
damn.
Late 50s, early 60s is when they started voting. I mean, compared to here in the U.S.,
yeah,
it's like the 1800s.
Yeah, so like you said, it's a huge cultural
like
change. They had to get a lot of people into the habit to get out of that machismo mindset. That's only the man that does it for you.
Exactly.
And then, so Veronica, do you have any last statements?
I think yes. I mean, I 100%. We need we think about it as empowerment, right? Empowering people, because people already know. It's just that they don't necessarily know how to make the connections, but they know what's important to them. They know what affects their family. If they take a moment to just like reflect back, it's like, oh, this issue is really important to me. And politics are personal. I became an environmentalist because my grandparents both died of cancer very early. They were 65 and 66, and they were very healthy. And they love being outside. And so to me, it was like, wait, something's going on, right? Like, they taught me to love nature, but they also, by the way that they died, also taught me to pay attention. And so for me, nature was about hiking and also environmental pollution. And that was how I got involved initially with politics. I organized for Ralph Nader, the Green Party, back in 98 for the 2000 election. And so think about the issue that's most important to you. Guaranteed there's an elected official that is making that issue difficult for you. And so how do we help you make that connection? I mean, that's part of our job. Right now, our organization is all volunteers. We don't have any paid staff. We'll have some paid canvassers for this next race, or next petition drive, but that's it. So if you want to volunteer, if you have, we require all sorts of, skill sets. So if you're into social media, if you're into this, like podcasting, if you're into graphic design, if you are into writing, if you're into whatever, there's probably
event planning.
Oh my goodness. Merchandise. We have merchandise also. If you go to our website, we have really beautiful merchandise that Raquel has spearheaded. It's seasonally appropriate. So we have hoodies coming up. And it's really great. I mean, so, it's really important. Just know that if you join us, you can also just join us by donating. That's also great. Know that if you join us, we're going to ask things of you, right? So even people know, like, if they give us feedback and I'm like, yeah, where were you 2 months ago? Like, no. Okay. So now you're upset about this thing. Okay. Let's talk about how you want to fix it. And I'll put them to work. And people are great. Like, no one has, like, blocked me on Signal yet. They're pretty awesome about saying, okay, yeah, I'll help with this, and I'm like, yes, let's do it together then. And also, like, you know, being aware that we don't always get things right the first time, and that's okay. But we're hoping to create a space where people feel like they can contribute, and at whatever level they can. And sometimes that's just with buying a t-shirt, and that's great because you're walking around with a message. And our message also came from the organization, Pueblo over Profit, so people over profit. And that's really what we stand for. And everything that we are trying to get accomplished, it's putting people above everything else. And in our country, it's the profit, right? It's the greed. Greed is the driver behind most of the things. And I'm not saying we want people to like have a vow of poverty. To the contrary, we want everyone to have access to a good quality of life without promoting consumerism, right? But acknowledging that people need very basic things to be happy, and that no one should be deprived of that if they're willing to, if they're willing to do their part. So yeah, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for having us. Thank you for finding out about us and spreading the word, because it's crucial that people of all ages get involved and stay involved.
Oh, yeah, no, I think it's very important work that you're all doing. So thank you guys. Thank you very much. And thank you for all the your volunteers too. It's important work.
Thank you.
And I think just the amount of volunteers shows that there is like passion, and that people do really want to help, that people are, like you said, fed up. And so that's awesome.
Yeah. And actually, like this second round, I feel it in my heart that it's going to be easier. I think people are paying attention. I mean, we reached out, 14,000 people signed our petition. And a lot of those people are like, oh yeah, I saw, city council and that what they did, and, blah, blah, blah. And so, there's a lot of solidarity. And so it's very, very appreciated.
Hell yeah. And if people say want to sign this petition, can they get in contact with you, or how would that be possible?
We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we have a website. So Instagram, I use Instagram a lot. So Instagram's pretty cool because we have a link tree. So when you go to the link, it'll give you the link tree, and there'll be a link to donate, to sign up as a volunteer, and all kinds of stuff. And then justiciafronteriza.com.
Oh yeah, everyone. So I hope you take that message. Oh,
yes,
ahead,
and
brother.
you can DM us, right? So send a direct message, and we'll get back to you. We can mail you some sheets to get signed. We can tell you where we're at. Look out for us on social media, so that people, will be at different polling places, and you can be like, oh, I want to go vote at that place or whatnot. So.
And one more thing, we've even gone out to, if there's any people who are disabled and who can't leave their home, we'd be more than happy to arrange for somebody to come by and get their signature.
Oh, hell yeah. That'll be very helpful. So thank you all. So thank you all very much for coming today. Like I said, it's very important work that you're all doing, and I hope the community listens and starts voting, I guess. And remember, everyone, don't just vote. Get educated on who you're going to vote. So with that being said, go out on November 8th before it's too late. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I like that. Thanks.